Hello and welcome to Deep In Pact, a proud member of the Doof Network where we dive deep into Wildbow's most work 5 years on. Coming up next is Elliot Diebold.
And that was Ruben Morehouse.
Hey, that's me. And we're back to talk about Null 9.5.
Or is it?
Or is it me? Exactly.
You could just be a vestige of yourself.
Elliot, are we just vestiges of each other? Which one of us is the real one? Anyway. So, yeah, we're still reeling from that twist, I guess, as is Blake, kind of reconciling his realization that he is but a vestige of Rose, struggling with this before he kind of reconciles it and starts to take stock of what this actually means for himself.
Yeah, it's sort of what we went through a bit at the end of last episode. It's just sort of coming to terms with how does this affect you going forward, I guess. We were more focused on the past. Blake is sort of like, well, what now?
Yeah, fair enough, honestly.
Yeah.
But, he does think about his past for a bit, but he actually kind of is able to see it as more of a relief than anything. Like, I think the direct line is something like, I can't be weighed down by my past because it didn't really happen, right? Which is, it's an attitude to take. Yeah, I didn't expect it to be so freeing, but what the witch was saying about it being kind of an anchor that now he's brought it on board, it doesn't weigh him down anymore, was actually quite on point, it seems.
Yeah. And I find that interesting how much he's just sort of able to cast it off. Like, I took it as, it should affect him a little bit less, but, like, I'm assuming it hasn't, like, he's not just going to go around hugging people now, right? Like, it doesn't, It's like he's just fixed it, but there's just, I think, this sense of, like a little bit of a sense of closure, I guess. Like, at the very least, coming to terms with the truth and no longer lying to himself has sort of untangled this, like, knot inside him. If that makes sense. Like, at the very least, it's just at least he can see it for what it was. I don't know.
And look, I guess we'll touch on this in a second, but Blake is kind of starting to see himself as not human anymore, right?
Oh, yeah, very much so.
And so there's an interesting question here of, well, did he... and this is a question that I had at least, is, did he actually take it on board, or has he cast off his humanity? Because, like, we kind of see him come to terms with his otherness. Maybe it's not such a black and white decision of either take it on board or cut yourself loose, but he's kind of picked a path that's a little grayer than it might be based on how he seems to kind of accept his lack of humanity later.
Yeah, I think it's about accepting the truth and then making, like, more informed decisions about, like, or with it. Because, I agree. Like, there are bits where he just sort of shows that he can stop needing to breathe or whatever now that he's a mother and he has no heartbeat. And I was just kind of there. I was like, I don't know if we should just be throwing that away.
Yeah.
Blake.
He doesn't seem to throw it away. With the breathing, at least, he's like, no, I'm just going to keep doing it. It feels nice.
And he talks to the witch a bit about it, and she's like, I don't know, maybe you can cast some stuff off, but you want to be careful, right? Like,
yeah.
And I think that's sort of the smart way to play this. Like, that makes sense to me, is you can probably ditch some parts of human biology, I guess, but you'd want to be careful about what you're doing.
Yeah. So one other thing that Blake kind of confronts is he kind of looks at his tattoos and realizes that his damaged vestige self has kind of been inhabited by these spirits that are the birds in his tattoos, which kind of makes that whole thing a bit creepier. And these birds start basically acting like the statues from Doctor Who, which definitely ratchets up the creepy factor.
The angels, yeah.
Yeah, the weeping angels.
Yeah, I still just, every time the tattoos come up, I feel like I say to myself, I've just got to go back and look at every reference to the tattoos and see if I can, like, figure out what this means.
Add it to the list of things that we need to watch out for on our second read through.
Maybe next week when there isn't a bonus chapter, I'm just going to sit down and try and unravel the tattoos in a bonus bit or something, because, I kind of got the impression that maybe the birds have been there kind of from the start. Like, some of these birds might have been there from Arc 1. Maybe he's always been a bit reinforced with bird spirits. I don't know. And then I was thinking maybe, like, he's the tree not the birds.
Mm.
I don't know. Look, I speculating because I don't remember. Like, I just remember there's always weird shit with the tattoos, and I never understand it. And I gotta like go back and revisit them and see if I can figure this out.
All right. Well, we'll leave that for a future
Yeah.
episode.
Or at least be more confident that there isn't like this may not be something where there's like a set of rules, right? It could just it could just be very interpretive every time, but I'll feel more confident saying that if I can go through them all.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, Blake is kind of settling back into his body, and he is still pretty beaten up. He's missing an eye, which he has been missing the whole time, right? I kind of forgot that he was missing an eye for a while, but it comes back here.
Yeah, I keep remembering because I keep picturing the drains as extra foggy and dark because also the eye that he does have has been like partially erred.
Yeah.
So it's like he's not just down to one eye; he's down to like half an eye.
Yeah. The other thing about Blake's body is the branches on his tattoos are spreading, which is interesting, weird. They start making noise, so stuff's really getting real.
Yeah, and so I think based on what he says at the end of the chapter that this is bits of that are in him. Am I? I don't know. I don't know. It's tattoos, man. I don't know what to make of them.
Yeah.
But I think this could be, you know, because he says later on that the bits of in his arm were burnt off at the end of the chapter. So I think that's maybe what these branches are.
Well, I suspect
like
that
it's his spirit being worn at by I don't know.
I think that happens at the end. I think gets in his arm when he's kind of climbing up the whatever rocks at the end. I don't know if he's got in his arms at this point, but anyway, Blake. Yeah, so we kind of touched on this before, but Blake is kind of seeing his body differently, right? He kind of starts using more mechanical language. He's forcing himself to breathe, and he kind of he seems to be adapting to the mindset of like, I'm just a kind of machine now. I understand myself.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great because you know the whole thing about the drains is he's been forced to the whole time sort of choose the parts of his humanity that he wants to keep, and now we're seeing that in like a much less aggressive manner. He's been shown that like even outside the drains, he sort of has the ability to pick and choose which parts of his humanity he leaves intact. It's a nice sort of extension of that idea that the drains have been hammering into us for 4 chapters now.
Yeah,
but yeah, like I like the way he's as he said, his language has become so much more mechanical. Like there's a bit where he gets a bit scared and he says, I felt a thrum of alarm and unease in my chest at the idea, as if my heart was a box and something was inside, fluttering in momentary panic. The vibration of it ran through me. And it's like, that's just feeling nervous. Like he's sort of abstracted this very normal reaction he's probably had 100 times in this book, and is now suddenly describing it so differently.
Yeah. Yeah, and we see that happen a few more times throughout the chapter as well. It's interesting. I wonder... Yeah, this is kind of what makes me think, like, we're kind of set up by the story to believe that he's at least successfully confronted his past, and that means he's not giving up his humanity in the drains, but I don't know, parts like this make me feel that he's giving up more of his humanity than we're led to believe.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely... The pressure is off of him from the drain's perspective, but now it's like the choice has just been put in his hands.
Yeah, definitely.
Like it's not like it's over. It's here you go. Like it's your turn to figure it out.
Yeah. So Blake, of course, looks for more answers, and so he heads back to the witch's hut to basically debrief with her about what just happened. And one of the things that they talk about a lot is the tarot reading back from the Duchamp house.
Yeah. And I mean, I love how he was just kind of here from her perspective. Like, you know, he's coming to terms with the fact that for him, it feels like he's been gone for months, but he was probably only gone for like a couple of hours.
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny.
Yeah. Again, fucking with Blake's mind, right?
Yeah.
I want to pull out this line where the witch... Blake kind of realizes that she knew that he was a vestige, and he confronts her about it, and she says, I had an idea, she said. Vestige isn't the idea that leaped to mind, which... Like, what did leap to mind? I'm so curious. Throughout the rest of this chapter, we get 1 or 2 beats that there's kind of more pieces to the puzzle that are missing, and this makes me... This is kind of the first of those where I'm like, okay, feels like something still is going on here.
Yeah, and I mean, then they sort of launch into a discussion about how labels can be dangerous, and like I think that's really the key here. Like,
Yeah.
whatever Blake is, and yeah, we even said this, when we were talking about Vestiges in Johann's domain,
Yeah.
we were sort of saying that Rose was a special case, and so, like, that still stands for Blake. I think like they're not
Yeah.
typical. It's not a typical Vestige that's happened here. At the very least. So, like, it's probably like a weird semantics thing. Like, maybe he's halfway between a Vestige and whatever she was thinking of,
Yeah. 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 I guess we'll have to wait and see if what exactly how exactly Blake defies his label. So yeah,
Yeah.
they launch a lot more into talking about the tarot card reading, and we get back into the kind of left hand, right hand stuff. And the witch adds some deeper meanings to this. I really like this. Like, we get it recontextualized again, and I'd kind of forgotten about it mostly, but it seems to be pretty relevant at this point. The witch pulls out the what was it? The hanged? Oh no, the chariot. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And says, "I'm working from memory, but the card usually features a man with a laurel or crown on his head, the victor, if you will, the conqueror." Which is
well, that's not a loaded word.
There's an explicit wink at the audience there. Yeah, no, I love this because, obviously we kind of touched on what the fuck is going on with Conquest while this has all been going on. And I love that this is kind of jumping right back into our mind and into Blake's mind. He kind of thinks to himself, oh gosh, okay, I better get the fuck out of here and figure this shit out.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to get real tinfoily, you could talk about how, with Blake having the stuff in Toronto, he was always going to end up in Toronto, and that meant Rose was likely going to end up with Conquest, and maybe that was all designed.
Interesting.
I don't know. I don't know how much to read into if any of this was planned, because the whole thing seemed like a clusterfuck from the inside. So who knows?
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right. Who knows how much of it is planned? There was a comment from last chapter that I just kind of want to drop here. I can't remember who said it, but somebody wrote something in the comments to the effect of like, the one good thing, the one redeeming thing that we've always kind of come back to for Rose is that she chained herself up to Conquest when she saw that Blake was freaking out about it, which is like a very selfless thing.
Yeah.
And with all this kind of recontextualizing in mind, like, that feels a lot more insidious now as well. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, if this was part of the plan, yeah, like, that may have been part of the plan.
Yeah.
But yeah, so to go back onto the left-hand, right-hand stuff, because, I mean, the witch kind of speaks in riddles about it, so I want to make sure I'm sort of, like, understanding it right. So she talks about how the left hand is your, like, almost your supplementary one. Like, you use it to strengthen the right hand, but you got to watch out for, like, just left hand things. Like, she avoids using the term evil to describe, like, your left hand facet, but it's more like something you got to watch for. Is that sort of...
Yeah, I think so.
That's my understanding of what she's saying. So, for instance, with Blake, his left hand was the High Priestess, which was all about, like, intuition and connections. So, she sort of talks about how if you're not using your right hand part, like if you're not under pressure, be wary of when you're falling into your left hand tendencies. So for Blake, it's, if you're not under pressure, maybe don't just, like, go with your gut or whatever.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I feel like we've been saying that for months.
Yeah, she's got a direct... That radio station was actually just broadcasting Deep Impact, and she's repeating it right to him. No, yeah, definitely. I agree with that completely. And
then obviously, Rose's left one was that conquesty one, which, I mean, there's not much subtlety in that one. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. And before we leave the witch's hut, just worth pointing out, she's so helpful. She's so nice. Like, just, you lucked out finding this really helpful resource down in the drains. You better pay her grave a nice visit if you get back out.
I mean, I reckon just summon her out of, like, assume he's got some sort of connection, or I don't know if he wants to make a trip back into the drains, but, like, he's met some of the nicest, best allies he's ever seen in the drains. Just got back here, rescue Green Eyes, rescue that lady, the witch, rescue that whole colony and the poor kids who run around with goblins in their hair. Like,
rescue the tentacle monster, because who knows what it would be like if it was in a not a stressful situation.
I don't
Might
know.
be a friend.
That's more of a Corvidae type summoning in my point of view.
Yeah. Okay, so one more thing before we leave the witch, which is this little line that I like, where she says, "Okay," she said, "your mirror self is a southpaw then?" "No," I said. I searched my memories before coming up with a fairly confident "no." She said. "Indeed." Again, something's going on here.
Yeah. I'll get into it later. I'll do it later.
All right. Oh, okay. So yeah, Blake leaves the witch's hut and he heads back to the beginning, retracing his steps back towards where he first came in. And on his way, he has a vision of Rose interacting with her parents.
So I like this conceit that Blake has to travel back to where he came from, like the entrance is where he started. It reminds me of what we talked about at the end of Signature, where it felt like, Signature really came full circle and Mags was confronted with all her challenges. And this is sort of the same. Blake has trudged right down through the drains, hit his like metaphorical bottom, and found like out this truth. And now he has to, in some cases, literally climb back out the way he came. It's a cool like idea.
Yeah, definitely. It does have that kind of... You're right. The vibe of... I mean, Blake is pretty explicitly confronting his past, present, future, right? So the sense of everything coming full circle, it makes sense for it to happen physically as well as kind of metaphorically, I suppose.
Well, and it really emphasizes this real revelation he's had now as the turning point, right? Like now he's turned around and he's heading back up and out.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about this vision of Rose. So Rose's relationship with her parents is bad, of course, so that's not fake, that she wasn't lying about that. And I mean,
relatively, like, it seems like she's doing all right compared to like Blake's relationship with his parents.
It's true. But it seems like she is more willing to engage with them than Blake ever was. Anyway, so this vision is here for a reason, right? The Drains is fucking with Blake, of course, throughout this whole chapter. And so Blake's thought about this is kind of showing him things that he will never have, I suppose. But
yeah, he sets this one more into the future category, doesn't he?
Yeah, but that doesn't quite ring true to me because, like, Blake doesn't want to have his family. Like, I don't think he would kind of mourn that as a loss.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can see from our notes in front of you what this vision meant for me. But yeah, for Blake, like, I mean, you could argue maybe his bad talking about the parents influenced Rose or whatever. Like, it's and soured her relationship with them. I don't know either. It's because the general theme of the rest of them is that like it's all your fault and that everyone is suffering.
Yeah.
And for this one, I don't quite see that connection.
Yeah, maybe the way to tie it in is like not having a good relationship with Ivy because you've poisoned the well a bit with your family, but that doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe if anyone in the audience has ideas, hit us up with them. But anyway, before we move on, it's time for everybody to turn around and get their tinfoil hats on.
All right, hold on. Let me just. All right, I'm ready.
Okay, because I've been doing some overthinking. So, okay, the thing that like Blake pointed out with Ivy, and I don't know if we touched on this at all in last episode, but the whole thing with like Ivy. Blake always said Ivy was something his parents did because he ran off and it was like they wanted a new child or whatever.
Yeah.
And that never really made sense to me because it was like, why did they have to wait for him to leave, I guess, is my question. Like, if they wanted a female heir contender, Blake was male the whole time, right?
Yeah.
So, the thought that occurred to me is it makes more sense to have had Ivy if Rose was the one who'd run away. But unless she was lying about it, Rose never seems to have run away like Blake did. And yeah, so then I sort of realized last episode, I was thinking very Blake-centric about how Blake was created and why bits of him were created. And I never really stopped to think that just because Blake's a vestige, that doesn't mean that Rose isn't. Right?
Okay. So
like
Okay.
I talked a lot about how Blake was designed to be the perfect fall guy, but then I was also thinking Rose, is this sort of perfect heir, and we're really seeing how she's stepping up to, kind of be a pretty potent diabolist from the looks of it here. And I'm wondering if it's not just that Blake was designed to be this fall guy. I think Rose was also designed to be the perfect heir. Like maybe, so I think there was like an original Rose who was a pretty good candidate. And it's not that just that Blake was made to mirror her. I think Blake was actually like carved out of the original Rose and then like tweaked and stuff. But it's like things like all like he's a very compassionate person, right? Like that's something that's really defined him the whole time. And so like I'm wondering if is that one of those things that Rose Senior was like, you have a bit too much compassion. I'm just gonna, give most of that to the Vestige.
Yeah.
Similarly, like if he's the one with the memories of running away and essentially abandoning the family conflict, then Rose doesn't remember, like, if she's the one who turned her back on the family conflict, then that turning her back is sort of conveniently forgotten from her, right? Like,
so she can kind of step up and take the reins.
Yeah, exactly. He's taken her distaste for the entire contest, or maybe not all of it, but, like, clearly, like, a lot more of it than she's got. So, yeah, I don't know, that's my thinking is like, creating Blake wasn't just about creating the perfect fall guy, it was about carving up this person to create the perfect fall guy and the perfect heir.
Interesting.
So there's sort of I don't want to say yin and yang, but it's one person who's been shattered into two halves, presumably by Barbatorum, to fit this perfect ideal of Rose Seniors.
I'll put it down in the prediction spreadsheet, I suppose.
Oh yeah, okay.
Wait, why not? You landed M equals P, so who knows?
Yeah, 1 for 20 or something. Yeah, I mean, I think this also makes sense because one of the things I was complaining about last chapter as well is it all seemed too expensive, right? Like, like I was saying, I thought like Alexis and Ty and all of them might be Vestiges, and that's just I don't understand. I was saying I don't understand how she paid for this, but I'm thinking maybe they were the original Rose's friends.
So they're actually real.
Yeah, I think so. So I think like Blake's apartment was Rose's apartment. Like I think most of the story of the general big bits of the story of him running away are probably like have some foundation in truth from what happened to Rose before she was sort of carved up.
So later in this chapter we see that Carl is also real.
Yeah, and that's a big that's something that sort of seals this a bit more for me is like why else would that be a thing? I guess.
Okay, interesting. I like it. I guess we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Ooh, nice prediction. We'll see. So Blake continues his journey, kind of moving through the drains. He goes again past the cold tentacle monster, avoiding it this time. Finds himself above the giant goblin, and the astrologer stared at the burning building, tears streaming down her face.
Man, I was so sad when
I
bit
know,
like that
right?
because that kind of came out of nowhere. Everything else had been very Rose and her cabal centric until then. Then it's just suddenly like, also the astrologer's miserable, and I was like, oh god.
Yeah. Yeah. And interesting to me, and it kind of confused me for a bit, is Blake doesn't react to this vision at all. And so I kind of, for my first read through, I was confused whether he actually, like, whether this was a vision he was actually having or not. If it was just a weird little bit.
No, I think it's sort of the ramping up to the vision quick cuts that we get later on.
Yeah, and later on we kind of see the point of those being showing Blake that he has had a negative impact on the world, which this is an unfair way to start that. Maybe the drain started with its weakest point of evidence, because Blake really only helped the astrologer.
I mean, look, I agree that directly he didn't have too much to do with it, but and especially he never wanted Rose and Corvidae doing stuff, which is really what set her against the sisters, but he started the whole conquest contest, so like, indirectly, like, you can, and Blake is the kind of person who would buy that. He's sort of very harsh on himself, so I can see what it's achieving. I agree, it's maybe a bit unfair.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sad, though. like, it's shit. It's just shit. The astrologer, we don't have that many kind of nice characters in this story, and the astrologer is one of them.
No, and she's someone, like, we've kind of been set up to really like the astrologer pretty much right from the get-go. She's always been nice.
Yeah.
There's always been really soft language to describe her, which kind of stands out in this story a bit. And then also, like, she's just a big nerd, which obviously, like, you know, this is a web serial, like, you know, there's not too many jocks reading it, right? Like, we're all kind of nerdy.
Elliot, shame on you, putting the whole readership on blast.
But yeah. So one thing I did want to say about this, and I'm trying not to be negative. Like, I guess I don't understand what the point of the tentacle creature was, like, at either stage of this. Like, it was kind of a cool fight the first time round, but I sort of didn't see what it added to the chapter it was in. And then again here, it's just sort of another obstacle he just kind of skips through. Like, it's a bit of a tense encounter, but usually all these things in Wildbow stories have a deeper meaning, and I can't see what it is for this one. Like, I don't really understand what it's sort of saying or doing here, apart from just being like another obstacle.
Well, we haven't got up to the reveal that the tentacle monster actually was Green Eyes the whole time.
Okay.
That'll recontextualize it for you.
Okay.
I get what you mean. I kind of agree. I mean, it kind of has some... It obviously had relevance to him finding out who he was, because it kind of demonstrated his real physical inability to deal with any physical damage, or be kind of adversely impacted by any kind of physical touch. But you're right that it wasn't doing anything twice. I think this is the first part of the story where something hasn't been doing two things at once, so
yeah,
I guess it makes sense that it stands out.
At least that I can think of, anyway. I do like how he kind of smart talks it on his way out.
Yeah, maybe the point of it is just to show, like, Blake had real trouble with this thing going in, but now that he's kind of come to terms with who he is able to really kind of effectively deal with it. Even, you know, having a vision when he is fighting it, which is what caused him to get fucked by it the first time.
Yeah, fair.
But you're right. Anywho, so Blake is standing above the goblin, sees the astrologer crying, and starts to think about what he wants. What is his future? And he eventually accepts that he's probably never going to ride his motorcycle again.
Yeah, and I mean, this isn't, like, I kind of like this resolution, but it doesn't feel like he really had to earn it compared to the others, you know? Like, he says, like, oh, I don't know if this counts as the test, but blah, and it doesn't really come up again for the rest of the chapter, but I'm skeptical as to whether he's completely left this part of the challenge behind him.
Yeah, you're right. I do think, though, that Drains is kind of, I don't know, like, draining him, right? Like, this part of the chapter is the first part of the chapter in the Drains where it's really, to me, really feels like a slog for Blake. Like, he's really losing things more and more, right?
Yeah.
I don't want Blake to lose all of his things.
Yeah, well, I mean, he does sort of give up on his hopes and dreams in this segment. Like, that's not nothing.
Yeah.
But I don't know, there's not like it didn't have the same sense of completion like some of the others did or will.
Yeah. So Blake has another vision. Mags is delivering mail to his cabal. I'm just going to keep calling them the cabal. Tiffany, Tyler, Alexis. And they each receive a letter.
And Evan.
Well, Evan doesn't receive a letter, but he's there. These letters are official declarations of war from the rest of Jacob's Bell.
Yeah, I mean, this section's like pure horror. Because Evan is apparently getting transfusions of something. I don't like that word. I mean, everyone's beaten up and just in a terrible state mentally and physically, except for Rose, because she's off chatting to the barber. So, like, that's great.
Yeah, I'm sure that's not a negative.
Yeah, it's just this short little, like, segment that's just basically like, yeah, so everyone in the Thorburn household, they're fucked.
Yeah, it's really, things are going to shit in Jacob's Bell, right? And, well, okay, so we are still seeing this through the lens of the drains, so maybe everything's fine. Maybe everything's fine, and that's the case. And we'll just.
Have I been reading the wrong book?
No, look. I'm sure this is the point where, for the first time, things just work out unexpectedly. No, yeah, the cabal is they're all doing terribly, right?
Yeah.
And Blake kind of sees this, and he kind of starts to get a clue towards what the Drains is trying to say to him here, but instead of thinking about it too hard, he goes left, and he gets to a very bright, blindingly bright area.
And I mean, this whole segment is so cool, because it's just Blake trekking through this area that gets progressively more and more epic, and then in the middle of it, we're also constantly switching between all these visions. Like, you know, I think we say this fairly often, but you can just picture it in a visual adaptation of, like, you know, Blake stumbling through this dark path, and then it cuts to each of these things, and then it cuts back to him, and it's like a close-up of his face as he's sort of gritting through it and getting more determined by it. It's pretty top stuff.
Yeah. One of the bits about this scene I really like is Blake, his brain kind of struggling to comprehend that this thing is huge and far away, and there's just this awesome cavern between them. And the word awesome applies here because it is very cool, but also is very, like, awe-inspiring. The whole idea of, like, a long-forgotten god that's kind of buried down here, just throwing out a bunch of blinding light and kind of accidentally preventing from erasing the Drains is great. I kind of feel bad for the Drains. Like, I don't know if the Drains is sentient, but I don't know. I feel bad for it.
Yeah, I mean, the Drains is a piece of shit, but, like, Ur's more of a piece of shit. So, like, if you ask me to choose, I'm picking the Drains.
Yeah, at least the Drains can give people superpowers in exchange for their humanity. It's very cool, right?
Just conceptually, like, I just loved picturing this scene.
So Blake has another vision. Fell's remaining family visits his grave. And I want to read this bit out. So here's the 2 lines, right? Fell's grave, the snow falling heavily. We'll come back tomorrow, the old woman told the little girl. 2 sentences. 2 sentences. It's this tiny little vision, and it imparts, like, so much emotional depth on you. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, as I was saying, it'd be great, like, in a visual thing to sort of snap cut to just these 2 standing there and have this line, and then you cut back to Blake, and it's just like, because the way they're interwoven, like, you know, you've got Blake sort of doing this march, and we cutting to these things, and you can see how it's fueling him. Yeah. It's great.
Blake has 4 more visions, short visions. Alexis smoking, Ty tired and weary, Tiffany injured, almost dead, and Carl smiling with his friends.
Yeah, fuck that last one.
I know, right? Fucking Carl.
But yeah, like the way these are getting closer and closer together, there's that real sense that, like, we're reaching the climax. You know, like, you just, as I was reading this, I was just getting so tense because it's all building up. It's like, this bit was so great to read.
Yeah, and Blake realizes kind of, I actually have made the world a worse place. And we see him, he takes a step back after he has this thought, and it kind of, the book is kind of faking you out to be like, oh, Blake is kind of backing away from this. And then he thinks a bit more, and he takes another step back and thinks a bit more, and you're like, what's going on? And then you realize he's getting a run-up to just charge at which is, it's great. Like, he's
That's
full
so
on,
Blake.
Yeah. He's full on confronting the fact that he's made the world a worse place, and kind of being like, okay, yeah, but if that's the case, that's all the more reason why I'm not just gonna lie down and die.
Yeah, any concerns I sort of had that Blake was giving up too much of his humanity disappeared when he did this, because I was like, no, that's definitely Blake. For better or for worse, he's still gonna keep doing this, I guess, jumping at
Yeah. Jumping at the real and the metaphorical but yeah, so Blake kind of charges at tendrils, climbing up, and he finds the hyena, a lost thing, and kind of uses it to chop at and help fight his way through.
It's like, just the hyena being there. It's just like, oh, of course, like
Yeah, classic.
it's great. I mean, I think he brings it with him. So, like, I swear to God, if there's more talk of this being his implement, I'll quit. I can't handle that again.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm going to read out a section here. I had to ask for help. I screamed. I screamed guttural, as close to the same tone as the god that shone its light into this dark chamber, fighting for as long as he lasted. I worshipped that lost god for just a moment. The light grew more intense and burned away. This is fucking hell. I love this bit. Like, this is the most, like, epic moment in Pact so far, right? Like, fuck, it feels so good.
Oh, it's so crazy. Like, Blake is, climbing his way up these rocks with a sword impaled on his hand, screaming for a god to brighten his day.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
It's really powerful imagery. It's so great.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't last very long because he gets out and then he's already surrounded by again. So it's sort of this, like, I mean, that's the story of Blake's life, right? Like this huge triumphant moment, and then the second the smoke clears, Ur's all over him again.
Yeah. He kind of, the light fades and he's back on the factory floor in the real world. Yay! But oh no, Ur's still here, and circles around Blake, trapping him. But he's out for now, I guess.
I mean, part of me. Maybe this is all the twists making me paranoid. Part of me wonders if he's out.
Do I need to get my tinfoil hat again?
No, like I think whatever happens here in the factory is still going to be part of his set. Like, I don't think he's fully escaped the drains yet. I don't buy that. For some reason. Like, I wonder if Blake's need to keep fighting, even in particular, was a huge part of why he led a lot of people down these paths and left them in this bad state. I wonder if part of what he has to do here is just let it go. I don't know. We'll see.
I guess we'll see. And that's the end of Null 9.5. We've got one chapter left, so presumably we're gonna see his fight against again.
It's the big 3.0, right? He's lost to twice. This is the one that really matters, according to our rule of 3.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. This is the decider.
Yeah, hopefully he can pull a whatever Tromos's familiar was called.
Right.
Where she lost twice and then she beat Tromos the third time and he ended up her familiar.
Yeah.
Blake needs to do that, but not the familiar bit, but the first bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what, are you replacing Evan with trading up?
And Evan is so 2 arcs ago.
Yeah, now we got a demon of erasure. Anyway,
just like Podrick wanted.
So before we wrap up the this chapter, we wanted to do a comment dive to see how people were reacting to this epic resurrection, I suppose, 5 years ago when this chapter first came out. So I'm going to pull out some comments first. A thread of comments with a few people, including Teller, Michael, Deadwalker, and Mark. Some of those are just human names. They're not even like screen names. Anyway, they're talking about and theorizing about the God of Light, the Lord of Light, I'm going to call him, and how he ended up down in the drains anyway. And so obviously one of the answers that comes out is it was just a big coincidence. He kind of was there and got uncovered, and it's a coincidence that is being held back. But that's lame.
Well, this book just full of coincidences like that. That
honestly,
tracks.
it feels like the most likely answer, but also I don't want it to be true, so I'm just going to ignore it. Other people were talking about the idea of the Lord of Light / the Lord of Light's followers kind of playing some part in sealing in the factory. These followers becoming erased, and so therefore the Lord of Light being cast down into the drains, which makes sense. I mean, the only two ways that we've seen people come to the drains so far is fighting or a typhoon. So
yeah,
it makes sense for the followers to be erased and therefore the god forgotten and cast down.
I mean, oh god, even if the Lord of Light was part of the fight with its followers and it got its connection snapped like Blake did or something, you know? Like...
So this is one of the other ideas. The Lord of Light as a being of light, opposing the demon of darkness, and they kind of be locked in some kind of stalemate since that point, where the Lord of Light is slowly being withered away while slowly gains ground.
That's so cool. Like, you see, like, any of those could be a whole book. That's great. I mean, I actually pulled out a comment by Deadwalker in a separate area.
Double points for Deadwalker.
There was also talking about this god. I think, like, the finest parts of the comment thread in this chapter to me were the stuff talking about this god, because it's just such a cool thing that's kind of thrown in at the end. But as we've sort of said, is just so cool.
Yeah.
And Deadwalker talks about how it's not just like a god of light, but just the concept of a god is generally associated with, like, creation of this god is just creating light and sound all the time. So like, holding it up as a symbol that opposes which it ties into what you were saying. It's a being of entropy, and like it sits well as this opposition to
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Like, it's not just making light, it is making sound. It's making, energy, right? And so why not? It could hold back
Yeah, well, and just the concept of gods in general is usually associated with creation to varying degrees. And so, like, of course, a god of light is the opposite of in many ways.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what people were saying about this chapter 5 years ago. And that means it's time for the end of Null 9.5. But don't worry, there's one more Null chapter, 9.6, and we'll be coming at you with that in just a few days.
Yes, but if you can't wait that long and you want to submit some last-minute answers to the discussion question...
You have to get it in real quick by the time this thread's out.
Yes, but if you think you can make it, if you think you know of a historical or mythological person who came out of the drains and may have lost something, hit it up in the discussion thread that's in the notes below this audio-video file.
It doesn't have to be a person. It can be an animal too. My personal example would be Farlap, who went into the drains and traded some of his life expectancy for being really good at racing.
Yep.
Anyway, putting that aside, if you're sad that this podcast has come to an end and you want to hear more great Duff Media podcasts, the place to go is duffmedia.com, where you can hear a bunch of other cool podcasts, including new Baby Duff podcast, new to the network, Do the Right Thing, which is a writing challenge podcast. I don't know, how do you describe it, I guess, in one or two words?
That's pretty much it, like a short creative writing, a short story writing challenge podcast thing. Look, they explain the premise better than we do, so go check it out to get a better understanding.
Yeah, other shows like We've Got Ward. In fact, Do the Right Thing and We've Got Ward both coming out on Wednesday, the day after we release, the day after today.
The day that this releases.
The day of this releasing, oh my gosh.
Whenever we have bonus weeks, it becomes Triple Doof Thursday. Wed Doof's Day.
Wednesday.
I'll workshop that one.
Yeah.
But it's a big triple day, so plenty of Doof content for your ears on Wednesdays.
Yeah. I've been really enjoying seeing a lot of people's and reading a lot of people's Do the Right Thing stories. And there's been
They're so good.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of discussion about them in the Doof Discord as well, which patrons will have access to. If you want to have access to the Doof Discord and chat about these stories, Wildbow stories, Do the Right Thing stories, or really anything, it doesn't even have to be a story, you can go to patreon.com/doofmedia and check it out.
Yes, and of course, Wildbow has a Patreon, patreon.com/wildbow, and without it, we wouldn't have cool gods and goblin swords, and so go give him some money if you can.
Yeah, they say you need a bow, a wild boar, as it was, to catch 30 to 50 feral hogs. So if you're worried about that, go to Wildbow's Patreon. Is that a reference that are you au fait with the Twitter memes at the moment, Elliot?
Yeah, I think I saw something about that. I understood like 40% of the reference, I think.
Well, you got to spend more time on Twitter. Speaking of spending more time on Twitter, we have a Twitter at MediaMD Podcast, where you can follow along with Elliot's live reads and follow to get general updates on when episodes come out and even bonus content.
So, we'll see you for, the next episode on Friday the 9th of August for 9.6.
We'll see you then.